Are you a foreigner and find yourself living amongst the British, unsure how to talk to them? You've come to the right place. Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 6 years. And today I'm going to teach you guys how to properly speak to British people. To be honest, I thought of this idea when I was in the shower and it made me laugh. And so now I'm gonna do it, even though nobody has asked for this. If you like this video and you'd like to see more videos of what it's truly like being a foreigner living in the UK, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's go. Now in part one, this is part one, by the way. Hello, welcome to part one. In part one, I'm going to share things that you shouldn't do, what not to do when speaking to British people. Number one, don't talk about money. Most British people don't really enjoy speaking about money. It tends to be kind of more of an American thing. Maybe Americans don't care as much, but typically if you're trying to be polite to someone, especially someone you don't know very well, it's probably best to not discuss money or ask questions of that person about money, such as like how much money you make, how much your rent is, how much did your house cost, how much did you pay for that car, all that kind of stuff that may seem more normal in America. Probably best not to do it here. Number two of what not to do when speaking to British people, don't talk to strangers. It's weird. Now, there's quite a cultural divide on this particular one, and the Northerners will make themselves known in the comments. The Northerners always tell me they are much more approachable and friendly than the Southerners. Okay, I trust you, guy. I believe you. However, typically I find that Brits, on average, are a bit more reserved, a bit more standoffish, maybe a bit more suspicious of people they don't know than perhaps Canadians and Americans. Not to say that Brits aren't friendly, because they are, but talking to a stranger and approaching a stranger is kind of weird here. I actually had reverse culture shock when I went back to Ontario. I remember vividly I had, here we go, spilled Coke on my laptop. Yeah, and then cried. So much crying. So I was at the Apple store in Ontario. I went to the mall. I'm at the Apple store. I'm standing at like the little Genius bar or whatever, and I'm desperately like, please help me. I spilled Coke on my laptop. And I remember vividly this woman who was also like a customer. She was also like waiting for her item to be returned or whatever. And she just struck up a very in-depth personal conversation with me, like asking how it's going and what am I up to. And she's telling me about her day. Like it wasn't necessarily just small talk. It was a real conversation. And it actually took me by surprise at first, because I'm not used to that anymore, having lived in the UK for a handful of years now. So I just remember walking away from that exchange being like, wow, I haven't had that in a long time. So yes, British people are very polite. They're very friendly. They're just a little bit more reserved when it comes to striking up an in-depth conversation with a stranger. Just something to keep in mind. Number three of what not to do: if you are going to mention sport, please tread lightly. People in the UK can be quite passionate about sport. Of course, there's British people who do not care. Totally, I get it. There's a lot of you guys who just do not care about sport. However, there are people who are extremely passionate about their particular team, their particular club, if you will. And if you are going to bring up the topic of sport, just be careful. A side note, Canadians and Americans typically will say sports. You're talking about sports. I like sports. It tends to be like a plural sports, where I usually find here in the UK, people talk about sport or they like sport. I don't know. It just tends to be more like sport. Number four on our what not to do list is referring to someone as British. Maybe don't do that. Now, typically in my videos, I say British. I just use a blanket term because otherwise sometimes my videos will just get too long, and for the sake of speed I typically will just say British. It annoys a lot of people. Don't you worry. I get a lot of comments about it. However, if you're speaking to a person, you're talking to someone to their face, you are speaking to a friend, a colleague, a boss, whatever, some people don't really like to be referred to as British, even though technically they are. So naturally, some people want to be referred to as English. Some people want to be referred to as Welsh, Northern Irish, Scottish, whatever word that they would most identify with. Some people really prefer to be called that, even though you may have a British passport. There are a lot of people that do not want to be referred to as British. Now, if you have ever taken a UK history class, even just one lesson, you probably know that there is a lot of history between the different countries. Some like each other more than others. Some are very passionate about what their identity is. So just as a rule of thumb, British, while it is a blanket term, and yeah, people in Wales and Scotland and England have British passports, they don't necessarily want to be referred to as that. Number 5 on our list of what not to do when speaking to British people, if someone asks you, "You all right?" you better not answer. A really common greeting here in the UK is asking someone, "You all right?" or simply, "All right?" But they do not expect you to give a real answer. So someone asks you, "You all right?" What do you say? "Yeah, you?" Even if your world is crumbling. Asking someone, "You all right?" is not really a real question. It's just to be polite. In North America, the equivalent may be when you go up to someone, you say, "Hey, what's up?" or "How's it going?" You know, it's just kind of like a throwaway, polite greeting. You're not actually looking for that person to give you a personalized, in-depth answer. Unless, of course, it's someone that you're very close to and maybe they feel comfortable doing that, but typically, you're not looking for that type of answer. So if you find yourself in the UK and a British person says, "You all right?" you better not answer with, "Yeah, you know, I'm just really struggling at work lately. I'm kind of thinking about maybe trying a new career, but I just feel really lost and almost like a bit helpless because I don't really know what my path in life is. You know, what is the ultimate goal? What do I want from life? I feel like I'm just really kind of struggling and I don't really know where to go next. Should I do this? Should I do that? Maybe I should just stay put. I don't know. I gotta pay my rent somehow, and if I quit my job, I definitely don't have anything lined up. And I've just been really struggling with it. I've not been sleeping very well, and it's all just been a bit overwhelming. And yeah, I'm just having a real hard time." Don't do that. Side note, obviously reach out for help with your friends, okay? Please don't bottle it in by any means, okay? Just, that's not what we're talking about in this situation. When a polite, perhaps a stranger British person, someone in the shops, someone at the pub, someone at work says, "You all right?" just say, "Yeah, you." And save all of the emotional trauma type stuff for people you are close with. Now for part 2 of this video, yeah, part 2, wow, you've made it this far, congratulations. Part 2 are things that you should keep in mind when speaking to British people. And the first one is all about bants. A lot of British people enjoy banter. Not everybody, of course, but a lot of people do. And if you come from a country that doesn't have this level of communication, it can be quite jarring. So for me personally, banter exists in Canada. Okay, Canadians have a wonderful sense of humor. Surprise. Everybody in the comments always says, "Oh, you got a British sense of humor." No. It's Canadian, I promise you. But even though Canadians have banter, I was shocked. I was shocked at my first job here in England. The banter amongst colleagues, amongst professionals, amongst peers, and my boss and my boss's boss, like, it's brutal at times. But the trick with banter is a lot of the times the banter that sounds the worst or like the most offensive is typically meant with the most affection. So if you hear someone bantering with somebody else and they're being absolutely ruthless, like brutal, like surprisingly mean, it probably means that those two people are best friends. But if you come from a country where banter is not really socially acceptable or acceptable in the workplace, it can be quite surprising. So just go with the flow, okay? You'll get it in time. You just give it time. Another thing that you should keep in mind when speaking to British people is sarcasm. Get ready. So very similar to banter, sarcasm very much has a home in British language. And again, you may come from a country where that's not really a thing, or it's not really a thing in the workplace, but it can be here. So you just get ready. Honestly, my biggest tip for foreigners, any foreigners watching, especially if you come from a country that perhaps has a different vocabulary and maybe even a different language and you're learning English, first off, wow, that's tough. I don't know how you can do it, but I'm extremely impressed. Second off, just observe British people in their natural habitat. If you're working in an office, just observe how people speak to each other, how people interact with each other, the banter, the sarcasm. You will pick it up eventually, okay? But at first it can be, quite surprising. Number 3 on our list, when speaking to a British person, when in doubt, just talk about the weather. The Brits love to talk about the weather. You guys love it, all right? You can't tell me otherwise. They love it. So when in doubt, when you're in a conversation, when you're interacting with someone and your mind just erases. You don't know your own name. You don't know what to say. You're just absolutely stuck. Just talk about the weather. It's a wonderful fallback plan because no Brit will be offended if you talk about the weather or you ask about the weather or you make a comment about the weather. Nobody's going to be offended. It's just like an easy choice when you're stuck for something to say. Next up on our list of things to keep in mind when speaking to British people, and you need to watch out for accents because let me tell you, there's hundreds. Now, there is no such thing as a British accent. It's just sort of like a throwaway term. Sometimes I use it just to encompass literally every accent, but there's no British accent. It is not a thing in and of itself. From my experience, it feels like there are hundreds of accent variations here in the UK. It's not that big of a place when you think of it, when you think of the combined land mass, but let me tell you, the accents. So we have accents like Cockney, Brummie, Geordie, Scouse, received pronunciation, then more broad ones like Welsh, Northern Irish, Scottish, so many. Truly so many. Even for me, having lived in the UK for 6 years now, accents still trip me up. One interesting thing is that I no longer hear any sort of accent where I live. So I live in Kent. Kent, of course, has its own sort of variety of accents, but I don't really hear them anymore. It's only when I travel around England or around the UK or I call somebody and someone with a different accent picks up and then suddenly it can be very jarring. So when I first moved here, everybody sounded distinct. Like I really noticed the accent. Now, not so much unless I get a different accent. And let me tell you, like I said, there's tons. But my day-to-day life, I typically am okay. The phone is horrible though. Like calling somebody maybe about a bill or the council or a provider of something or customer service for something and I get a different accent. It's embarrassing, I'll tell you that much. Thankfully, for the most part, British people, whether English, Welsh, Scottish, or Northern Irish, or if they're all right with being referred to as British, thankfully they are extremely friendly. So if you're a foreigner in the UK, you're gonna figure out how to speak to them in no time, I promise. If you like this video and you'd like to watch more videos, wouldn't that be wonderful? Check out this video where I share all the Americanisms that I still say, even though I live in the UK. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!